This is the Human Operating System Lab, where we learn how humans work, so we can build better lives, make better decisions, and help the people around us do the same. This is State Lesson 11, State and Communication. Every conversation is not simply an exchange of words. It is an interaction between two nervous systems. Most people believe communication is primarily about language, choosing the right words, speaking clearly, listening carefully. Those things matter. But they are not where communication begins. Communication begins with state. Because long before someone processes your words, their nervous system is processing you, your breathing, your posture, your facial muscles, your pace, your tone, your tension, your emotional regulation. Before language is consciously understood, biology has already started forming an impression. This happens automatically, continuously, mostly outside awareness. Humans evolved to detect safety long before we evolved complex language. For hundreds of thousands of years, survival depended upon quickly answering questions like, "Is this person dangerous? Can I trust them? Should I move closer or farther away?" Those ancient systems still operate today. Every conversation activates them. This means communication is never only about information. It is also about regulation or dysregulation. A calm nervous system often helps calm another. An anxious nervous system often increases anxiety around it. Stress spreads, calm spreads, emotion spreads, regulation spreads. Scientists often refer to this as emotional contagion, but underneath the emotion is physiology. Humans continuously synchronize with one another. Heart rate, breathing rhythm, voice cadence, facial expression, body posture, attention. Even without trying, we constantly influence each other's internal state. Think about walking into a room. Someone smiles warmly, their shoulders are relaxed, their breathing is slow, their movements are unhurried. You often feel more comfortable before a single meaningful word is spoken. Now imagine the opposite. Someone is visibly tense. Their movements are abrupt. Their voice is sharp. Their breathing is fast. You immediately begin adjusting, perhaps becoming defensive, perhaps becoming quieter, perhaps preparing for conflict. The conversation has already changed before it officially began. State shapes perception, and perception shapes interpretation. When the nervous system feels threatened, neutral comments can sound like criticism. Questions can feel like accusations. Silence can feel like rejection. A delayed text message can become evidence that someone no longer cares. The words themselves have not changed. The state interpreting them has. This is why difficult conversations often fail, not because people lack intelligence, but because their nervous systems are protecting them. When survival circuits become dominant, the brain reallocates resources. Curiosity decreases. Flexibility decreases. Empathy decreases. Working memory decreases. Listening becomes difficult. People begin defending positions instead of understanding perspectives. Winning becomes more important than learning. This explains an important principle. People rarely communicate at the level of their intelligence. They communicate at the level of their regulation. A brilliant person under severe stress may communicate poorly. Someone with average intelligence but excellent regulation may communicate remarkably well. State determines access to your abilities. This also changes how we think about listening. Listening is not only hearing words, it is creating enough psychological safety for another nervous system to remain open. Sometimes the greatest contribution you make to a conversation is not saying something brilliant. It is remaining regulated. Your regulation becomes permission for someone else to regulate. This does not mean you become responsible for another person's emotions. Everyone remains responsible for their own nervous system, but you do influence the environment those nervous systems experience. Just as someone's anxiety can affect you, your calm can affect them. Influence is not control, but influence matters. Before entering an important conversation, consider preparing your state. Slow your breathing. Relax unnecessary tension. Lengthen your exhale. Stand with stability. Reduce internal urgency. Remember your purpose. Because if you enter already dysregulated, your words may never reach the conversation you intended to have. Communication is not merely the transfer of information. It is the meeting of two biological systems, trying to understand one another. The words matter, but the nervous systems carry the words. And often they determine whether those words are ever truly received. When you regulate yourself, you don't just change your own experience. You change the conversation that becomes possible. Because every conversation begins with state. Next lesson, leadership is often described as vision, strategy, or decision-making. But before any of those, leadership begins with something far more fundamental: the ability to regulate yourself so others can regulate with you. Because leadership is communication scaled. This is the Human Operating System Lab.